Welcome back to Truth and Tribe with your host, Mike Sorelli. We've got Eddie Gallagher back for part 2 of the After Action Review. If you haven't listened to episode 1, please go back. It's going to set a lot of the context for what we're about to discuss. And my hope here is that we get deeper into the reflection following close to 12 months of getting dragged through the mud, being accused of some pretty serious charges, but being found not guilty by a jury of your peers. You know, as we were prepping for this second episode, and this just came in from a highly educated former federal leader, and asked, what questions would you ask Eddie on this podcast? And his response was, well, that's a very complicated question because he's a war criminal. Mm-hmm. And that made me pause. It actually makes me reflect of, I need to be very careful of passing judgment on things in which I don't have context. Very few people have context into your entire career of your multiple deployments, and they especially don't have context into the evil you faced in Mosul. Now, I say that, and I'm not making excuses for anyone. We still have rules of engagement that you are well versed in. Yep. Nobody needs to explain those to you. And we try to uphold that code of conduct and follow the law of armed conflict. So where we left off, you are in prison, the brig.
Yep.
Okay. And you said at one point you fell to the floor and gave yourself entirety to God. What was the final straw that broke the camel's back on that one?
We talked about the phone call, obviously, with my wife, Andrea. And, at that point, I think I was about, like I said, a couple months in. I still was holding on to the belief that the command was going to have my back, or at least support me in some manner, just because it was ingrained in me that we, take care of our own, no man left behind, that type of mentality. And it wasn't, once Andrea laid it out for me that the command was definitely not only not going to have my back, but they were coming after me. That's when, I knew it sort of it broke my heart, but at the same time, I had to submit or surrender to God. I think as men, especially in the SEAL teams, we try and control what we can, and we try and take control of the situation, which is what I was doing that first couple months in prison, looking for ways to help out my situation or, help out my wife and my lawyers. But they were denying me, visits, denying me legal representation. So at that point I just had nothing. I literally felt helpless. And so I just gave it all to God. And that's putting my full faith and trust in Him.
That is a hard thing to do for any, let's say, alpha type personality.
Yep.
Is to recognize that you don't have control over all things and having to submit. So one of the things you told me that makes me cringe is that you didn't receive a visit from your lawyer until 2.5?
About 2 months in.
2 months in.
Yeah, it's like between a month and a half to 2 months in is when my first legal representation from the Navy came to visit.
I'm sorry. So for a lot of the listeners, to include myself, I envision you finally get placed in the brig, you get charged, the lawyer's right there.
Oh no, that's not at all. So you get right when I got into prison, they threw me in solitary confinement for 3 days, which you don't leave that room or shower. They put food under the door. It's very. I don't understand why they do that or why they did it to me. They definitely would. They would treat me like I was a mix between Hannibal Lecter and Jason Bourne. They had me, even to move me from cell to cell, they shackled my legs and arms together, and they don't do that with any other prisoners. So it was Can you repeat that question? I'm sorry, man. I forgot. I lost my train.
No, it's okay. This happens. It's been a long day. And by the way, also make sure you're hydrating because after this, we're working out with Coach Daniels, and I'm going to just warn you that Coach Daniels doesn't he doesn't let you go easy.
Good.
So you basically didn't get visited from the lawyer until about 2 months in.
That's right. So I had previously talked to a lawyer from a buddy of mine, gave me his contact because he knew I was under investigation. He'd said, hey, maybe you should have a lawyer on standby. So I talked to this guy, told him my situation. He was part of a nonprofit called United American Patriots. They said that they would take my case and that I would not pay any, they would fund it and they would defend me. But other than that, I wasn't allowed to visit them either. They weren't allowed to come visit me. Even phone calls were very hard to do. So once the Navy has to give you a lawyer. They're required to give you legal representation when you're being charged. So the first Navy lawyer that came and visited me, he was, like I said, about a month and a half to 2 months in. He was from Lemoore, which was about 3 or 4 hours away from San Diego. He had to go TAD to even come do legal visits with me. And he told me that he would not be able to come see me or represent me as much because of the fact that he was 3 or 4 hours away. One of the first things out of his mouth was, we should start looking at a plea deal. And I told him, no way. But that's what the brig is. It's a plea deal factory. What they do is they put you in there, pretrial confinement. They set a trial date for, in my case, it's like 9 months later. And while you're in there, they are constantly threatening you with, it's over, like, you're going to lose, you're getting life in prison, which is what they were telling me. And then they let you sit on that for about 3 or 4 months, and then they'll come to you with a plea deal, like, hey, if you just plead guilty to this, we'll only give you, and for me, I think they offered 25 years. We'll give you 25, like I was going to take that. But a lot of what I saw is a lot of young sailors, soldiers, Marines, and airmen, they're all in there. They succumb to that because they sit there and they're told, you're done, you're going away for how many years, but if you just plead guilty, we'll only give you 3. And so a lot of these guys who can't afford civilian lawyers end up taking that even though they are innocent. So it's they entrap people in there. So I found all this out, going through it. But yeah, the deck is stacked against you when you're up against the government. And I can tell you the scariest thing when I was in there was when they presented the evidence in my cell, and it was a binder that says, SOC Gallagher versus the United States. And that's exactly what it is. You have the weight of the government coming down on you, and that's no small thing.
That's insane. It's almost like finding out you got stage 4 cancer.
It was definitely. It took a while to process it when I saw that binder, and then what happened. After that, I definitely realized what the weight of the government is and what they can actually do. They will win at all costs. That's why their prosecution rate in the Navy's in the 90th percentile. I mean, that's pretty high for prosecuting, people in the service, and there's a reason for that. The prosecutors, they get promoted off wins. They get promoted off winning cases. So there's a lot of careerism involved, and they don't care whether you're guilty or innocent. They just want the win. And I saw that through my case. It didn't matter what evidence came forward that negated what these accusers were saying or that obviously would prove my innocence. They would just ignore that and just go after any negative fact they can. And then they were leaking all of the negative information to the media the whole time.
You know what I call a lawyer's win percentage? That's a vanity KPI, which is not necessarily a key performance indicator, which is not necessarily a great indicator of justice.
I think anything with the word vanity in it.
Yeah. So, dude, you had to, with the weight of the government behind you, you had to have broken down, dude. I mean, just been in tears and just, soul searching.
There was definitely a lot of soul searching. I probably spent that first couple months trying to take ownership of why I was in there. Like, how did this happen? Did I do something to make this happen? I went back over, from the moment I took over that platoon and went through the whole deployment. I definitely made mistakes as a leader, leadership mistakes, but nothing that I could think of could amount to what was going on. I just couldn't make sense of any of it. It was definitely frustrating, but I kept a pretty good routine in there. That's how I got by. I just set myself in a routine, so I would work out in my cell at certain times of the day just to keep me focused and keep my brain sane, I guess. And I ended up taking probably like 3 or 4 prisoners sort of under my wing in there. There was another SEAL in there with me, and we were allowed outside yard time at night for an hour. And so I would do workout programs with them, and that just sort of kept me from thinking about what was actually going on. But yeah, it's an emotional roller coaster. The whole thing was, there'd be weeks where we were on highs where there was like, hey, this is looking good. And then the next week it was like, nope, that's not happening. I think one of the times I almost broke twice in there. One of the times is we filed a motion to get me out of the brig so I could defend myself out of the brig.
And how far into this?
This was about 4 months in.
4 months in.
Went to the motions hearing. I thought my lawyers presented a pretty good case. Actually, my wife, Andrea, took the stand and just did a phenomenal job. And so I was told after that, like, they're going to let you out. It's looking good. Just wait a couple days. I get the phone call on the brig, and they're like, you're not getting out. Like, it's not happening. And that was a pretty low point for me. I don't try to show emotion too much but at that point I was like, I was almost in tears just talking to my wife. Like, it was just very dismal. And then the other time is my son came and visited me, and he came out with a hospital gown on, and I wasn't allowed to touch him. I could only do 1 second embrace, and that was it with my wife or my kids. But he had this hospital gown on, and I asked the guard, why is he allowed to have, or why is he made to have this hospital gown? I'd be like, because he had a tank top underneath, and it's going to excite all the pedophiles that are locked up in there, so he has to cover himself up. That I almost lost it on. And the fact that I wasn't allowed to even have him on my lap or talk to him, I had to go back to my cell, and every time I got a visitation, I got taken in and strip searched, down to, spread your cheeks and all that stuff. And the guard was messing with me. And I almost broke, but I managed to maintain my composure, but I was definitely going nuts inside. It took me, a while to calm down from that in my cell.
What was going through your mind when your son's visiting you? Because I'm sure you don't want him, one, to subject him to that, but to see you in the manner that you were.
I felt, I think, ashamed that my son has to come visit me in prison for, murder, was what they were telling him, and, telling everybody. And, no kid should have to come see their parents, in prison. But it hurt me more, especially because my kids had put up, and my wife and kids had put up with my 20-year career of my drive to keep deploying, and that's not easy for families. And they held down the home front the whole time, staying true to me, just following me, letting me do what I wanted. And now this was sort of like the payback for them. Like, they're like, my dad was doing his job, and now he's being locked up away for life. It was real hard. And you never know what your kids are thinking, or what they're actually going through. But I thank God I have my wife, who is a freaking rock, and I think that's the only reason my kids remained so resilient during the whole time.
Kids are Switzerland. They're off limits. So I don't mean to keep going there, but I think that's a valuable lesson for the listeners that are parents. I mean, parents make mistakes too. How did you explain that to your son? What was going on? Because I can only imagine the confusion, as you just pointed to, that he was going through.
Well, with the whole hospital gown thing, I didn't want to break that down for him and explain to him that. I was just like, there are stupid rules here. We just have to follow them. But it was real hard I didn't do a lot of explaining to my kids about what was going on. I was more worried about just their welfare and my wife taking care of them. I think one of the hardest phone calls I had was I had that initial hearing to see if I could get out of the brig, and I thought for sure I was going to get out. I was like, this is a big mistake. And the phone call I had to make after that to my kids, telling them that I'm not coming home. My youngest son, definitely, he's very, very close to me. He had a real hard time. He's crying on the phone, and he started yelling at me, telling me that I lied to him, that I was coming home. So it hurt. It was real tough to deal with. And then my oldest son was just starting college, and I was actually supposed to drive him up to Santa Cruz a week after I was locked up. So my poor wife had to rearrange and organize travel plans for him to get to college. But I mean, that's like a big moment in your child's, growing up, is to be able to do something like that. So, I'm missing out on stuff like that, which I've missed out just like the rest, all of us have, on birthdays, whatever, because of our job. And now it's because I'm locked up. It was hard, for sure.
So now that you're through it, have you and your son talked about the whole ordeal?
And I mean, all my kids have chapters in the book. It's a daily thing because it's still, going on that we talk about it. But my kids, they don't really care about the details. Mm-hmm. They were just overjoyed to have their dad home. That's all they care about, is they just want me home. So we don't, my kids know what I do. They know the job. We don't hide the fact what our job entails. I never have. So they understand what we do. So it's not like they're completely confused. They were just confused on why the government was coming after me for doing what we do.
Well, I've seen the pictures of your family. Your youngest son looks happy. I'm glad for you guys, man. I'm genuinely happy for you guys. What do you say to your son if he says, "Dad, give him what you went through"? I think I got to give the SEALs or the 75th Ranger Regiment or Special Forces a shot.
That's what he wants to do. He's only 12, but he's growing up in the SEAL teams, and he's like, I'm going to be a SEAL. Then my oldest son, he's getting a degree in chemistry right now at Santa Cruz, but he recently told me he's thinking about joining the Army. And I think I had asked him, I was like, why, after everything that we've been through, why do you still want to serve? And not like trying to keep him from doing it, but I just want to know his thought. And he was like, because service is important, and I want to serve my country. And I can't argue with that. There's a lot of honor in doing that. And I think you can't, your kids are going to do what they're going to do. And I don't denigrate my service or anybody else's because of what happened to me. Serving in the military is one of the most honorable things you can do in this country, to protect this country, to serve it. And honestly, if that's what they wanted to do, I would support them 100%.
What a bunch of resilient kids that they would still find the good.
They are
in the bad. That's awesome, man. Two more questions, and then I want to move to the trial quickly, get through that, and then sort of finish out with the reflection. Walk me through a day in the life of Eddie when you're in the brigade, because one, I know you like to work out, man.
Yeah,
I'm assuming you didn't have access to a gym. This makes deployment look like a complete nightmare.
It's so the day in the life there. Reveille is at 05, I believe. There's loudspeakers. Guard comes over and screams, reveille, get up. You have to get up out of your rack, make your rack tight as a button, and then you wait by your door. They buzz you out. You march to breakfast. You have 20 minutes to eat, and they don't give you barely any food. It's just the way it is. You get like 2 hard-boiled eggs maybe. And then you go back to general population, and you are not allowed back in your cell. You sit in a chair, and they have one TV on there, and all they do is play CNN, nothing else. So you are just sitting there sort of biding your time until lunch, and then lunch, another 20 minutes to eat, and then go back, more of the same, just sitting around till dinner. And then you, after dinner, you are, I think it was around 8 o'clock at night, or 7 to 8, you had outside time, which you go to the yard, and there they had like a couple pull-up bars. They had one ollie bar with like plates welded onto it. But, you know, you make do, man. I think due to the nature of how I grew up and like moving around every 2 years, I can adapt to places pretty quickly. And so I just adapted to the environment I was in and tried to make the most of it while I was there. So I would work out in my cell in the morning, and then I read books a lot. They had a library there, which you could check books out from. So I would just go and check books out and sit there and read. And then I would do the workout class at night. And then in order to get fed, I had to do some team guy shit. And I ended up befriending 2 of the guards who were completely like ticked that I was in there, 2 Marines. And they ended up getting some dip from the outside, and they would put it in my cell. They'd act like they go search my cell. They would slide it in there. I would then go in and very quickly empty it out into a rubber glove in the fingers, rip those off, put them in my boot, and then when I was going through the chow line, because they had other prisoners serving food, I would then slide the dip underneath the tray, and I would get extra servings of food, and that's how I ate.
Eddie, this is straight up jail stuff.
That's you got to like adapt to your environment and try to survive. That's what it really comes down to. I mean, you just got to do what you got to do. So.
No, I hear you. You go from leading men charged with one of the biggest responsibilities anyone in our nation can ever have, especially in the environment of Mosul, to having to sneak dip in chewing tobacco in a rubber glove. That's
and then the other thing is, you know, the guards were being told to make me snap in there. So the NCIS and unfortunately some members of our command went in there and told the guards they have a morning meeting every time before they take shift. And the two guards that I had befriended or were supporters that told me, they're like, listen, somebody from your command came in here and NCIS, and they said to try and make you snap, to try and make you do something. So basically they can point the finger and be like, this guy is crazy. So I would get randomly strip searched. My cell would get tossed all the time. I'd get yelled at for slouching in a chair, get threatened to get thrown back into confinement. Just stupid stuff that they weren't doing to any other prisoners. And then as far as working out, then they said I was not allowed to work out in my cell, that I was no longer allowed to do physical activity. I told them that that's how I kept my sanity in there, and it was healthy for me to do. And they said that I could go talk to the psych and get on drugs. So everyone on there is drugged up. They have everybody on there sedated. So I refused. I was like, no, and I would just try and work out when and where I could. And it was basically I looked at it at that point as it's a game. I'm like, you're trying to break me, and I'm not going to let you break me. And I would just keep a straight face the whole time.
I want to ask one more question because you brought up ownership. And, you know, in the last episode with Dan Luna, you know, I talked about how we lie to ourselves more often than we lie to others. It's the easiest thing to do. And then you start to believe your own lie. And then I want to give a data point to the listeners who are like, hey, this is just a fluke. This is a one-time thing. You NCIS doesn't do this to any other sailors. I want to give them a personal story. Just another data point. Again, not trying to sway people one way or the other, but as you looked back, and I know you had a lot of time of reflection, I actually have two questions. What did you take ownership of? Looking back, because you said you were reflecting on everything from the platoon, the deployment. Is there anything that you specifically said, hey, I've got to take ownership over this?
Oh, for sure. There's multiple things. I definitely was, like we had talked about earlier, I was target fixated on getting the job done, and I completely set aside how the platoon was feeling, how they were doing on deployment, and I was definitely emotionally unavailable, I guess, and I just didn't. If guys had petty complaints, that's what they looked. Or a complaint, I looked at it as a petty complaint. I'm like, you're fine. This is the job. I could have done a better job of definitely hearing the guys out or trying to solve some problems that some of the guys were having. If they if it was getting too much for them, maybe sitting them out. And then obviously the big one is the day of the incident. Taking the pictures. It was team guys fucking around. We were bored. We were told to stay out there for 2 more hours, which the firefight was over. The Iraqis were done clearing, but they told us to just wait to see if they made any movement. And the guys started messing around with the dead body that was laying there, taking pictures. I partook. As a chief, I probably should have put a stop to it.
Damn right you should have.
Yeah. And that's one thing I'll say. I definitely regret is not taking a step back. But I'll tell you, the environment that we were in, it wasn't even like a thought hey, what we're doing is sort of fucked up. It was just we're joking around. I mean, there was dead bodies all over the place, and I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just trying to give context to the mind frame that we were in.
And POWs weren't really a thing in that situation.
No,
this was rare because usually, and I'm not trying to paint you in a direction, but you've got the Iraqis who are just enraged.
Oh yeah, and I mean that's the other thing. We live with the Iraqis, and they would take the ISIS prisoners back there and rape them in the room next to us, which we would listen to all night long. It was a very savage environment. So yeah, our mindset was not what it would be back here. And that's that incident happened, the pictures happened, and I definitely take ownership of that. I regret letting that happen, but it did. And then also, obviously from the pictures, the guys afterwards, guys were taking pictures of their phones, and I just happened to be a week later, one of my best friends was texting me, and he was like, hey, how's it going out there? I heard it's going awesome. And I had just received the picture that I had taken, and I was like, oh, and I sent it to him as this is how it's going. It's awesome out here. And that, I think I said got this one with my hunting knife, and that was a just dark humor joke. Hey, this hunting trip's going awesome. But yeah, I shouldn't have sent that text to him, but at the same time, I'll say this, that was between me and him.
Two friends. And so we're tracking correctly. Once they got a hold of your phone, they extracted that from your phone during. Okay. Yep. Yes.
Well, not from my phone. They raided my house.
When they raided your house.
Yeah. They got that, and so yeah, that was the actually the best and worst piece of evidence they had.
Because they took it figuratively.
Oh yeah, and they used that picture. I mean, obviously they posted it all over the media, but that actually, and that was why it was the worst piece of evidence, because it does not look good, right? It painted me like this guy did it. He's admitting guilt, but it ended up being the best piece of evidence because one, they ran the knife that I had, no blood, no DNA, nothing, and then if you look at my hands, everything, there's no blood on me anywhere because that incident never happened.
I think people need to understand there is a sense of humor. It's almost locker room banter between close teammates. I mean, if you go scrutinize an NBA player and what they're saying in their texts, or an NFL player, you would find things that mainstream society would think is inappropriate.
Yeah.
And we say things in jest. When I saw that, I'm like, it's just two friends.
That's what it was. I mean, and they found that out in the trial too, because it was like nothing in that text thread was like, oh, I'm doing this. It was like joking around, like, hey, we talked about football and then it was like back to joking around. So it was just joking banter between two people. But obviously, you take that out of context or put it into the civilian populace, it doesn't look good.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here on sanctimonious ground and tell you that there aren't texts out there, not of bodies, but of dark humor between me and friends. They just didn't go public.
Yeah.
And anyone who wants to point fingers and cast blame on that better be very careful. Don't throw stones. You know how that goes. You said you had access to books. What was the number one book that you found value in jail?
Let's see. Well, the number one book, the Bible.
No kidding.
Yep. I read that every night. I had a routine every night before lights out. I would read passages out of the Bible, and then I would pray for a half hour. And that did the most for me.
Had you ever read the Bible before?
I attempted many times, and that's the beauty of have everything taken away from you, where you have nothing but yourself. You are then forced to sit down, evaluate, but then you also have time to read important things like the Bible. Which
thank you for being honest, because most people will tell you they've read the Bible. I grew up in Catholic schools from the first grade and all the way to a Jesuit high school, and I've never read the Bible in its entirety, just the passages that you study.
Yeah.
Are you still reading the Bible?
Dude, yeah, I try. I definitely try to stick to it. Obviously, when stuff gets busy, it gets away from me. But my wife is a very strong, faith-driven woman, and she keeps me on task. She'll let me know when I need to get back in there.
That's great. Behind every good man is a great woman, and I know I can say that, having experienced it. So, again, you've covered the trial at length on multiple podcasts, but give me the sort of the 5-minute overview of what happened, why the prosecution's case just started unraveling all the way up to the verdict.
Basically, I mean, I can give you exactly why their case unraveled, because this whole thing started on a bunch of white lies, and the command, unfortunately, believed their side, believed their white lies. And then so when you're trying to win a case off of white lies, you yourself, the prosecution, anybody that's involved is forced to lie themselves. And I think these guys, they were coercing these guys in my platoon, the 3 or 4 that were going to testify against me, to say certain things that weren't true. They're like for instance,
and this is NCIS.
This is both NCIS and the prosecution. So, for instance, Josh Brenz wasn't there out that day of the incident. He was accusing me of shooting a little girl, but he said he wasn't in the same tower as me. And he said this other guy was with me and said I did it. Well, they interviewed the other guy, and he was like, nope, that never happened. Well, they went back to Brenz and said, will you say that you were in the tower and you saw him? And he said, yes, I will. So all of their lies, though, got caught. They all got caught up on the stand. I think these guys, through their text messages that we had subpoenaed, you could see they were conspiring that whole time. Like, we got to get our story straight, this and this. And I believe they got together and came up with a story. But once they were separated and were told to tell their sides of the story, they were contradicting themselves. They were messing up their own lies, and it all came out. I mean, it couldn't have come out any more on the stand than it did during that trial. Craig Miller was my LPO. Mm-hmm. He completely got a case of amnesia on the stand once my lawyer started asking him real questions. He couldn't remember anything else about that day except that I had stabbed this guy in the neck multiple times, but everything else was a complete blank.
To which the Marine that was attached said you did not.
Yes. Yep. And so, yeah, that Marine was good friends with Craig and all them during deployment. And he was actually at a party with them after deployment where he heard them talking about concocting this thing to come after me. And he's the one who actually reached out to me and was like, these guys are on another level. But at the time, I didn't know whether to believe him or not because he was friends with them. But each witness that got up there, we couldn't have been more like overjoyed at the end of the day. But what was funny about it is you would walk out and the media was out there and they refused to like report any of the positive stuff that happened on our side. They would just keep asking questions. You could tell it was very biased. And then it wasn't until Corey Scott came in, which was one of the prosecution's main witness, and then he got up there and said that he was the one who killed the ISIS terrorist. And he pretty much, and this is the gist of it, NCIS coerced these guys into saying certain things, and then once they said those things, they were like, if you go back on this, we're going to throw you in prison. So Corey Scott had come to me when I was locked up and told me everything, that this was a lie. This got out of hand. He wasn't the only one. There was another individual that was part of that group came and told me the same thing. And what happened is they used they pretty much played the prosecution's game against them. The prosecution gave every one of their own witnesses full immunity, which they could say anything they wanted and not get in trouble. And so he just got up there and was like, well, then I killed him.
Is that pretty common?
Yep. If it helps them win the case, then yeah, they give all of their witnesses full immunity, and anybody that wanted to testify against me had none. And they were like, if you say something up there, you're going to get charged as well, which is what scares people into coming to testify for me. Anybody that, like my TU commander, wanted to come testify because he knew exactly what was going on. They found out he was going to do that, and they sent him a target letter saying, if you come do this, we'll come after you.
Does he actually have a copy of that letter?
Oh, I'm sure he does, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a nasty, nasty game. But, after the Corey Scott had come out with that, the prosecution, you would think, would be like, okay, but they were going to die on that hill, and they just kept pushing forward. They called their own witness a liar. And then pretty much at the end of the trial, they came out with the verdict. I got found not guilty of everything except for taking the picture, which we never denied. And the jury, I don't know if they do this in civilian courts, but after the trial, the defense team and the prosecution go talk to the jury to get their thoughts on, like, what'd you guys think? And the jury pretty much told the prosecution, like, I can't believe you guys even brought this to trial. They're like, every one of your witnesses is a liar. And they all like, why? How did this get to this point? So, I mean, and that's what I kept telling people, that all my friends that were very concerned, leading up to the trial. I told them, I was like, just wait till these guys get on the stand. That's all I can say is just wait till they get up there and have them spew all this stuff they said on NCIS videos. And they're going to have to. And it definitely worked out just like I thought it was going to.
Let me weigh in here with the story I said I was going to get to. Mm-hmm. And this story is not about me. It's because, in a small way, our stories are actually sort of tied. So I was in Afghanistan in 2012, strike force commander of a specific location in Afghanistan. And on December 2nd, 2012, around 5 a.m. In the morning, Al-Qaeda launched an attack on our base, a very complex attack. They attacked at dawn.
Yep.
And they initiated a VBIED, which is a car filled with explosives, which breached a gate that they were trying to get through. And this was only about 100 to 150 meters to where my assault troop was located. So I, in board shorts and a thing of shoes that are Patagonia canvas shoes, I grab my weapons, I run to the tower, I remember one of my guys yelling at me to wait for the muster, because as per the procedures, we were supposed to get a muster for all personnel. And I probably yelled the lamest thing I ever have in combat. I said, "Get to the wall." I don't know where they came from, but as I got to the tower that was close to us was under attack. It was getting riddled by bullets. It was manned by National Guard. Mm-hmm. And so, yelled coming in so that they didn't shoot me. When I got up there, they were just in the fetal position. I felt horrible for them. Got two of them out, popped up over the wall, killed two guys who subsequently had suicide vests. I didn't know that when I shot them. They were very close to the hole in the wall, and then shot a third guy who I don't think I killed, but I saw him do the skip, the hop from getting hit, and then went back down because the tower started to get riddled. My guys come running in, to include one SWIC operator that got the machine gun up and running. And it was a 2-hour firefight. But during the firefight, they had actually parked a second VBIED directly under that tower, which you couldn't see unless you went to the lip of the tower and looked down, but you're getting shot from that direction. So they initiated that VBIED, and it knocked us all out. I remember waking up snoring. And it was things were bad. There was a retired Delta operator by the name of Tyson Nix, who was killed very early in the attack. And so after that second VBID, I have a CCT member with me. These guys are awesome. I'm sure you've worked with CCTs. For the listeners, they drop bombs from planes. It's their primary mission, and they are good. Yep. No one as good as them.
Surgeons at it.
So we have to eliminate them through danger close attacks. And he coordinated the attacks, and they wouldn't drop because we were so close, and the risk of collateral damage, civilian dying was so high. So very rare. I had to get on the fire direction net, and I think they heard my frustration where I vehemently told them, I accept responsibility for all bombs off rails. Here are my initials. Make this happen now. And they did. And the danger close attacks, and I think the CCT controlled about 15 of them were close, dude, to the point where it was uncomfortable. And especially with the Kiowas with those 2.75 inch rockets, which can get pretty squirrely. I remember at one point looking at the CCT and said, "Hey, can you push him off?" Like set it at an offset angle, and he basically told me, "Hey, stop! Like let me do my job." And I stopped. All right. And no matter how much I cringed, he made it happen, and he performed. I don't want to say flawlessly, but he performed like an absolute professional. I was proud of my guys watching them repel this attack, especially my recce guys. It was those moments that I always look back on fondly of my guys performing and almost believing I don't belong here at all. Well, fast forward to 2015, my CCT texts me and says, "Hey, you got to check this out." And it's an article on the special operations unit that reported to the scene about 40 minutes after the attack had commenced. It was even after the second VBIED. And the officer of that special operations unit received the second highest award in our nation. And my reply was, that's unfortunate. And that's just not true, because on the citation, it talked about how he dropped the bombs as well. Yep. This goes back to Colonel David Hackworth talks about there could be two guys in a foxhole, and they could tell wildly different stories.
Two different stories.
But they're both true. I don't agree with that. Like, truth is based in objectivity. It's based in fact. Yeah. Just because somebody believes something to be true doesn't make it true. Well, I sent it to my commanding officer at the time, and he said the same thing. He said it was unfortunate, but he didn't have the bandwidth to address it. So I talked to a few senior officers, and they're like, "Hey, Mike, you got to take this under your charge, and you've got to drive this." And so I talked to Warcom, which is the headquarters for the SEAL community, and said they said, "Hey, basically build the package." And I built the package all from scratch here in Austin, wrote everything from scratch, got witness statements, everything. And it was a thorough package, even statements from the Apache and Kiowa officers overhead. There was videotape from the drones that shows the second VBIED going off, and that special operations unit wasn't even there yet. So it's video. It doesn't lie. And again, I was friends with this specific officer, and if I saw him today, dude, I'd throw my arms around him, give him a hug, and then say, "What the hell, man?" And have a conversation. So, the intent of me driving this was to get my guys recognized. And as I looked at this incident, again, I wasn't mad at that guy. I should have driven recognition for my guys. I should have put them in for awards, and I failed to do that. That's my fault. So we put the package together. I give it to Warcom. They look at it. I get the thumbs up from Warcom. They said, hey, route this through a congressman. So I route it through a congressman. He sends it to the SecNav, Secretary of the Navy, and then it goes to the award boards. And this is right around the time I'm retiring. So the day I retire, I get a phone call from Warcom. An individual you would know as well, who's a retired SEAL captain. Everyone loves him. He's just the sweetest guy, and he's dedicated his life to the SEALs. Mm-hmm. And I thought he was calling to wish me a happy retirement. And he knew it was my retirement, and he addressed it. He's like, hey, man, I got some bad news. You're under investigation for mishandling of classified information. NCIS is going to investigate you. And because I respect this man so much, and he was forthright, and I said, thank you. And he did inform me. He said, now that NCIS has this, we cannot be involved because that would be obstruction. And I'm not versed in legal.
He's correct.
Legal terms whatsoever. So what happened was the senior awards board member, who was not a SEAL, who's a Navy, officer, turned me in because, one, the command I belong to, I couldn't mention a name. I sort of thought something like this would happen. So Admiral McCraven, I brought this to Admiral McCraven before we even submitted that, and he remembered this incident just off the top of my mind. He actually said, hey, was this where Tyson Nick was killed? And I was actually shocked. I'm like, yes, sir. He's like, I remember this. It was on this attack, December 2nd, was on international news. It was on CNN, BBC, all the rest. And he brought it to SOCOM, and SOCOM sort of squashed it. And that's why I was forced to go through a congressman. Well, NCIS comes out, and they scrub his hard drive. And I'm sure they treated him with the utmost respect. And then I get a phone call from an NCIS agent who says, hey, we're in Austin. We need to come get your hard drive so that we can inspect it. And I said, hey, if you guys do that and you scrub it, I lose everything. I can't correct the truth on this. Yeah. I can't get my guys recognized. And I'm sort of pleading. I'm like, hey guys, come on. I've had some 15-6s, but I was cleared in all those. That's a procedure to make sure that the killing was justified. Yeah. And this guy starts to become hostile, and I'm trying to be very respectful. And then all of a sudden, about 25 minutes into the conversation, another guy voices him, finally identifies himself on the phone as the senior investigator. And I'm like, so you've been on the phone call the entire time and you didn't identify yourself. And they played a little bit of good cop, bad cop. And the way it ended is I said, hey guys, I'm not going to give you my hard drive. Let me figure this out, and I'll call you. And so I went and got a Marine JAG colonel who then ultimately couldn't represent me, so put me in charge or in touch with another Navy JAG. And so as he's dealing with NCIS basically told him, like, hey, we want his hard drive and we want to see what's on it beyond this incident. He's trying to correct the truth. And they basically said they want to see if there's war crimes on there. And they had no justification, no cause to that whatsoever. And as the thing proceeded, they made a phone call and they threatened to raid my house. And I'm just at a low point in my life. I'm retired, recently divorced, not much money because I stood up a foundation for the good of veterans. Basically, we created a mini MBA and I funded it when I didn't have the money to fund it. And I'm in near tears from just rage. And so as I get off the phone call with the NCIS agents, I call Admiral McCraven for guidance. And he was in Switzerland. I leave a message. I didn't know that. Calls back in 15 minutes. He was with his family on a family trip, and he called back 15 minutes. And he calmed me down and said, hey, let me make some phone calls. And there was nothing he could do. And eventually, we got NCIS. It took a while to get them to agree to do a search on the hard drive that was specific to that incident. And we finally gave it over, and they scrubbed everything. But I felt like a criminal. Like I was being treated like a criminal after 20 years of service. Yep,
that's how they do business. This wasn't the first time I've dealt with NCIS either. I think my first platoon chief got actually taken out of country by NCIS, and we got all investigated, and they're real devious, but they're amateurs. Like they're not good investigators. So basically with my case, this guy Joel Rapinski, who was the lead investigator, formed a prosecution before he started investigating. So he was like, this is what I think happened. And so he didn't investigate. He just took bits and pieces that fit his narrative from these guys. And like every interview, and people can watch every NCIS interview because it's in my book, the QR codes, but listen to the beginning. He tells them, you can say whatever you want here. Your name will never appear. Your face will never appear. No one will ever know that you said these things. So he pretty much gave them carte blanche to say anything they wanted, which is what they did. And a lot of it was just erroneous, like details, like, oh, he's mean and he doesn't like me and this, but they just added all that up, and that just forms this narrative that I'm this, crazy psychopath, and that's what they end up putting out and giving to the media.
Yeah, I think, basic psychology, if people lie, they sometimes stick with that line of giving the platform, they'll build upon it. I would ask why organizations in the government aren't held accountable, but we both know the answer. We'd be wasting our time.
Yeah.
So if somebody asked you today, hey, tell me about the SEAL teams, what would you say?
I'd tell them it is a brotherhood. And I would say not the entire SEAL teams are a brotherhood, but there are brotherhoods within the SEAL teams. There's, like we said, tribes inside tribes. That is the culture I grew up in, and that's the culture I still believe in, that you are there not for yourself. You are there for the man to the right and left of you. You're wearing your plates, not for you, but for your buddy, so you can protect him. And that goes not just in combat, but also outside on, you get to know people's families. You get to know who they are. You help them out even off work. If they need help at 2 a.m, you're going to go help them because that's your brother and you're loyal to him, no matter what kind of trouble he's in. And that's the way I was raised. Like if someone, and even when I was a platoon chief, I had one of my guys got thrown in jail they said he, got in a fight and almost stabbed somebody. I went, instead of reporting that up, I went and bailed him out, and I sat down with him, and I was like, let's go over exactly what happened and how we're going to present this to protect that, because he's my guy. That's my individual. That's what the SEAL teams are to me. It's a righteous job, and we're out there defeating evil. I mean, I take all the politics and all that stuff aside. It's good versus evil, and our job is to eliminate evil off this earth.
That's a hard concept for a lot of people that have never lived that life to understand.
I imagine it is, and I don't expect, and that's the thing, I don't expect people to understand it.
Yeah.
I just expect, what I would expect is people to understand that there are individuals out there that are willing to do that job, that want to do that job, and I'm not saying that they should be able to do what they want, but I'm saying give them the benefit of the doubt, or at least let them have due process when they are accused of something, or being, that's what I want people to get out of this is I got no due process whatsoever, no rights, and then it became very political, and at that point it just kept getting worse and worse. You sign up to defend this country, and you go do a job that literally takes your soul, parts of your brain, and you're willingly doing that job knowing that. At least give that individual the benefit of the doubt and give him due process when he does make a mistake.
There's nothing nothing absurd with that statement whatsoever. There's nothing absurd about that statement whatsoever. That sounds logical. It sounds reasonable. Yet
it didn't happen in my case, and it doesn't happen in a lot of cases, and it's still going on to this day. There's guys getting prosecuted, which is why we started the nonprofit.
So I do want to get to the nonprofit. I want to get to you talked about it. It kills your spirit as well. It does. This job, there's no way. I said nobody walks away from war clean.
Nope.
No one. If someone said, do you feel like you've lived a life of morals and values? What would you say to them?
Definitely. Yeah, I have my morals and values. You know, I said this, I had to give a speech, or not a speech, but when the jury was coming down with my punishment, I guess it's tradition or whatever that I get up and pretty much, you know, try and plead, like, please don't give me the max punishment. But I got up there and I said, you know, I've tried to live my life, you know, justly or whatever, but I was like, I've made mistakes. I'm a human being along my way, but I've always learned from those mistakes. And I've made ethical mistakes. I've made moral mistakes. I'm a human being. But what makes you a professional is you learn from those and you grow and you move on. And that's it. Just like when you deploy overseas multiple times, yeah, you're going to do a dirty job, or however you want to put it, of killing individuals, right? And that can have an effect on you. But what makes you a professional is coming back from that, going home to your family, and learning to deal with that, you know, and be a part of your family without letting that affect them. You know what I mean? And that takes work. It's not something that's easy, but that's, you know, what makes special operations, or just people in the military in general, that people that deploy and go put themselves through that. To me, that, you know, that's no easy feat to do, and that's why we have the greatest military, I think, you know, in the country. I mean, we have morals and values in this country, and especially in the military, that we abide by, or we try to abide by. And one of those values for me is, you know, my family. My family is like probably one of the biggest things. So my wife, God bless her heart, like, let me deploy as many times as I want. I mean, I was addicted to deploying. I wanted to just keep doing the job, and she stuck with me. But like, what I tried to do for her is come home and be there. And that's not an easy feat. Like, I could have done better, but I know I tried to, you know, be there for my kids and everything. But, you know, it's rough. It's a tough thing, but that's what the job entails.
We run these special operations guys, especially the guys that do 20 years, into the dirt.
Yeah, you're run ragged.
And you know what? They don't ask for a thing in return. And having served 20 years like you, it's almost like it didn't happen. And I look at you guys with such admiration that, and thanks. Again, it goes back to, I wish I could explain this to the public, but there's just no way to do it for what our brothers in arms have been through, and the struggles that they go through when they come home. And on that note, you know, you talked about spirit. It ate at your spirit. And you told me a story that once you retired and the ordeal was done, Andrea said, don't even do anything for this first year. Don't look for a job. And she gave you a task.
Yep, to fix myself.
Talk about what that mental and spiritual journey has been for you. I mean, what have you done to fix yourself? And what have you learned from that?
Right when I retired, my wife's marching orders were, you will fix yourself this year. You spend this year trying to get all the treatments that you should have been getting, or, you know, before I got out. I went to HBOT, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, and did like 65 treatments of that. That definitely helped some, but it's, you know, it wasn't the answer for me. I went to a group, it's called Operational Restored Warrior. They bring guys up to the Colorado mountains, and it's a week-long spiritual retreat. It's very, very, it's awesome. It did huge for me. You know, pretty much broke down into everything is spiritual warfare. Everything that goes on in this country, you know, with all this crap, it's all spiritual. So it was I really came out of there like enlightened, definitely with, like, a lot of this stuff that I was spoke, all this negative stuff that was happening, because of the trial, none of that matters. Like, I have a gorgeous, amazing, strong, sexy wife with 3 beautiful children. Like, I could not ask for anything more. Like, this is what I have, so why pay attention to what's all this negative stuff? So that was like huge for me. And then I was still dealing with stuff. I was writing the book at the same time, which was very, very, very hard because I had just packed that 2 years into the same suitcase where I packed everything else, thinking that I just wouldn't have to think about it again. And when I started writing the book, I had to delve back into everything, and then I went down a pretty dark hole. And I think the breaking point for me was my daughter. And I wasn't like going around yelling or whatever, but I was very depressed. My kids could see it. So my daughter just told me one day, she's like, I don't like being around you when you're like this. And so that was it for me. I had talked to a couple friends about the ibogaine, and my wife had reached out to Dan's wife, and she was like, yep, we were both on board. And so I went out there and did that trip. That was huge. That set the foundation for me on how I should feel. I know how to like get back to a state of peace now. Or I know what that feels like. That's what that did for me. But then that, I think everybody thinks that's, because that's being talked about, that's the answer. That's not the end all be all either. It's constant work. And this is what I've told guys. And, and I talk to guys that are getting out now because I think this is a major issue that's going to blow up here in the next year. Now we're coming on the 20th anniversary of 9/11. Yeah. It never, like, once you touch war, it touches you back, and that it's never going to like go away, but you need to constantly work at it to make yourself better. And the advice I give them is the same advice I give them when they were going to Buds. Just don't quit. Like, that's it. I mean, you have to wake up every day and work on yourself so you can be a better person for yourself, but for your family, which is the most important. So, I mean, I pretty much, I'm saying this now like I'm like, all right, but that's what I learned all through last year. And I think just a couple months ago, I'm like at a place where I feel like I'm at peace. Like I feel like I'm ready to go, go forward and do good, or help other people out without having this, weighing on me.
The rucksack, the proverbial rucksack on your back weighing you down.
So yeah, this whole last year I spent with just doing treatments. And then, I talk to somebody once a week, and I think as well.
Changed my life.
Yeah.
There's 3 people I credit who have severely changed my life and saved me in a lot of ways because I went down a dark hole. Conversation for another day, but Dr. Chris Free.
Yes, the
man who just gives and gives and gives and never asks for a damn thing in return. Nope. I don't know how many veterans
he's saved.
Yes.
He's a saint.
My wife, who was not my wife at the time, but my girlfriend and then fiance. And then, I do think Dr. Martine with the mission within, with the ibogaine and 5-MeO, it warrants taking a serious look at it because what we're doing for veterans and the last statistics I saw were 17 to 21 veterans are taking their lives every day. What we're doing is not working right now. No. And what's the definition of insanity?
Doing the same thing over and over with the same result.
The same result. So, much like your case where people just make a snap judgment based off previous held beliefs, I think a lot of people have negative connotations for what Mission Within is doing because they've been raised to think that psychedelics
are bad.
Yeah.
And I mean, I understand that. Like, even when I was going to do it, you're nervous and you're like, I can't believe I'm going to take this medicine. But I mean, coming out of it, I think it's people don't have the knowledge on it and they don't know what it does for for guys. And I think, what Marcus and Amber Capone are doing with the VETS program and getting the word out there, like, I'm hoping that just keeps skyrocketing and people can get more knowledge on what these psychedelics do especially for guys coming out of the special operations community and everything they've been through. They call it, it's like the nuclear dose. They're not going to go through 5 years of therapy. Yeah. This is 5 years of therapy in 10 hours, 12 hours.
What you have to respect about Marcus Capone and Amber is one, they're business professionals. Marcus served his country in the SEAL teams for a long time, but to endorse or back something like that is the fear of criticism.
Yeah,
and it's amazing. Now people are starting to applaud them,
but it took a while to get there.
Yes, and it goes back to the SEAL teams. We almost within the culture endorse I call it a healthy disrespect for authority.
Yeah,
because it's what enables our culture and allows the SEALs to take risk and color outside the lines.
Think outside the box.
To come up with solutions for which solutions to which no answers exist, or book problems for which no solutions exist. Do you think? And I see it from your perspective, brother. Like if somebody attacks your character, all I see is red. And I think I understand the rage one would feel. I mean, your example is somebody attacked your character to the worst degree possible. Yeah. And it impacted not only you, but more importantly, your wife and your kids. Do you think forgiveness is ever in the cards? Can you ever forgive those guys or come to a point where you let it go?
Yeah, like it's something that I'm working towards. I can sit there and say, "Oh no, I forgive them," but obviously the nature in me, like if I start thinking about what they did to my family, I get enraged. That's just the man in me. Like you're supposed to be protecting my family, and this happened because of what they did. But you know what I have learned and what I've through this whole process is, and it's been I've been asked would I do this all over again and go through what I went through? Like, could you do 20 years knowing that I would do this, the last 2 years would be this way? And I'd say yes, because it's given me so much perspective on a lot of things. I've grown from it. And the big blessing is after being smeared like that in the media, I really how it is in the teams, your reputation's everything. So there's a lot of ego, a lot of hiding.
Yeah.
I don't have that anymore. I'm here is me, all the good and the bad, and people can think what they want, but all I can do is keep moving forward, and I'm going to continue to help other people because I went through this situation, because there are certain things that I think people can learn from, going through a situation like that and remaining as resilient as my family did. And I think people can learn from that. And my wife and I are both on the same page. I mean, we started that nonprofit immediately after the trial. We were we need to help other people. And the big blessing is the amount of people that got behind us. I know you can focus on the negative, all these people were bashing you, but there was a large group of people that were behind us, the American people. And for me to just go away off into the blackness and try and figure something else out does a disservice to those people as well. They got behind us. It's our turn to pay it forward. We got all this kindness from all these people. And I mean, that was amazing to me, because you don't think about that when you're in the military, the people that are oh, thank you for your service. And you're oh, sweet, whatever. But to see these patriots come out and they're this is wrong, what's going on. And they supported us. I mean, people donated to our legal funds, all that. We just can't look past that. That's huge. And so
you almost have an obligation now to them.
That's how, it is an obligation to pay that forward. And which is, I don't know if I would have this thought process if that didn't happen. And also it gave us a platform to be able to help other people, as crappy as the situation was, because my wife started that organic Instagram page, she created, thousands and thousands of followers. So what do you do with that? I can either, and believe me, I wanted to shut that Instagram account off as soon as I got out. I was I'm done with this. My wife, she's always smarter than me. She's talked me out of it. And she's you can either you can throw this and delete this account, or you can use this to help your brothers.
That's powerful.
And that's all I want to do is just help. My big thing is guys getting out, just because I'm fresh out and I know how rough that is. And so I want to be there and help guys out, point them in the right direction. Like, hey, go get these treatments. Here's what I did. Here's what worked for me. And just have an open dialogue with these people. I told a couple guys, I'm like, dude, if I can do 20 years and then go through that 2 years and I'm okay, like I'm, still working on it. But if I'm doing okay now, you can do it too, man. Like, and that's what my passion is.
Dude, that's awesome. And that wields a lot of power for how you just described it. Guys will look at you and say, well, man, I was nowhere close to what he went through after 9 combat deployments.
Well, yeah. And I think that's a big problem too, is that's why guys don't get help, because they look at the person like, well, I'm not as bad off as him, so I'll just deal with this myself.
Yep.
And that's the wrong thing, the way to think. Everybody has their own trauma, and no one's is more greater than anybody else's. You don't know what other people are going through. So I'm like, no matter what, you might not think you did as much as the next guy. You still need to go get help. You still need to, get some treatments or fix yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a valuable point for everyone listening. And I'm going to do it in the context of the military. I don't care if you have 1 deployment or 10 combat deployments. For some people, 1 deployment fills their cup and they need help. And guess what? No judgment is being passed. That's them.
Yeah.
And some people can go 10 or 9 deployments before they their cup fills.
Yeah, each individual is different.
Absolutely. You said something about the Instagram account, and you were talking about, you figured out that really only the opinion of your family and your close friends and teammates are what matter. But that's so counter to today's society, where people, somebody will come up and be like, hey, did you see this guy's Instagram account? He's got 100,000 followers. And I'm like, okay.
Sweet.
How many of them would stand by them or come visit if they had stage 4 cancer in the hospital?
Exactly.
It's your family, your close teammates, yes, close friends, and that's all that matters.
It's your tribe.
It's your tribe.
Yep. Keep your circle small. No one gets in, no one gets out.
Well, do you ever think the 2 main accusers will reach out to you for a conversation?
No.
If they did, would you welcome that phone call?
I would. Yeah. I don't know how it would go. But I talk to Corey Scott still every once in a while. I helped him out, try to help him out before he got out. He was dealing with some medical stuff. That's the thing, man, is, and it's probably hard for people to understand. I love those guys like they were my brothers. That's how
Little brothers.
I looked at everybody in the SEAL teams. We were all one big team. And I would, if they came to me and wanted to talk, I would definitely welcome that. But at the same time, it would depend on where the conversation went, but I can almost guarantee that'll never happen. I don't know what they're doing, but I've heard story, they're just sort of going off to the deep end. And they're still, they're trying to make movies to counteract me. And it's like, okay, and that's the other beauty of it is I going through all this, I'm like, go do what you got to do, man. Here's my side of the story. That's why I wrote the book. That's why I put all the QR codes in there, because it's this is just straight facts. And I'm not trying to change your mind. Especially people are like, oh, he's a war criminal. Great. Here's all the facts that happened, and it's undisputed because it's on video and there's a trial audio. That's not my side of the story. That's what happened. And that's all I can really do. And from then on, if people want to believe what they want to believe, they can. That's their prerogative.
Well, it's over. It's done. Verdict's been rendered.
Yeah.
And I know you're focused on moving forward.
Exactly.
Dude, so you are going to continue to serve your fellow brothers and sisters in arms. Tell us about the Pipe Hitter Foundation.
Yeah, so we came up with that idea before trial that we wanted to start something because my time in the brig, I saw enough young kids in there. I have a son older than some of these kids, right? they're in there for, whatever, smoking weed or doing whatever. But I mean, their lives are completely ruined from doing that, right? And I look at it as like these kids decided to serve their country, but then they made a mistake, smoked weed. I'm like, if these kids went off to college, they would be smoking weed every day, doing whatever they want. I'm like, these are human beings, and you got to give them like a second chance or not destroy them completely. But unfortunately, that's what happens. And like, I met enough of those guys in there that were in there that didn't belong, that I was like, something needs to be done, because this isn't right. So we decided to form the Pipe Hitter Foundation, and what that entails is we pretty much serve active duty, military, and first responders. And if they're put in a situation like mine, it doesn't have to be as dire as mine, obviously, but if they're being unjustly accused, then we will, I have a board, we have a board member, a bunch of board members, and we review cases on a monthly basis. And if we give it the yay, then we will raise money for your legal defense. We will provide emergency relief funds for their family as they're going through that stressful time. And then if that individual wants it, we will advocate for them and get the word out. My brother started the Pipe Hitter podcast, where he's having people that we are helping out right now. Obviously, these people can't talk for themselves, but he has their wives on. And my wife will help those wives as well and give them advice on like, hey, this is how you should do, like, advocate for your husband. This is because, a lot of these wives, not everybody is an Andrea Gallagher. So she's a force to be reckoned with. So she's helping them out. And then on my side, I'm definitely still have love for our community. So I have guys reach out, and I will give them advice or try to help them out in some way. And it's been going good. Obviously last year was pretty hard raising money with COVID and all that going on, but
Yeah.
we still managed to help out a bunch of individuals, and we're just going to keep growing. And then I think we're going to add another pillar onto the nonprofit, which is my passion, which is helping guys with their mental health, especially when they go through a situation like that. But not only that, when they get out of the military.
Can you tell the public about what you may be doing with America Top Team?
Oh, well,
Still in its infancy?
It's in the works. So America Top Team, which is freaking phenomenal organization. They're huge veteran supporters, and we're trying to come up with an idea so where we can take veterans to go train over at their gym with fighters for like a week, just to sweat it out, get whatever demons they need to get out, and also train with some of the best fighters in the country or in the world. So that's going to be huge. I'm looking forward to like getting that going.
That's awesome. I hope that that comes to fruition. But the fact that, again, you found through tragedy a different perspective that actually paved a path forward in your life. Few people can't say that. You actually may have been more lost had you not gone through this, just got out.
I definitely would have been.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have been just doing the same thing, but contracting. That's the direction I was going in. Because as you know, it's like that's what I know, and that's what I want to keep doing, and that's a blessing as well. Like, I'm glad this broke me of that, because now I'm home, and like this is where I belong. I put in my 20 years, but obviously, as you know, it becomes like an addiction or a way of life. You're just like, I got to keep doing this, and your family suffers, and so that's been a huge blessing. Like, just to be able to be home and then realize this is what's really important in life. Not saying like going over there and fighting evil is not, like, I'm glad I did it, and I definitely have the itch to go back, every once in a while. But what's important is what you have in front of you, which is your family.
We talked about this for certain retired team guys that we know who just can't close that book.
Yeah.
Your situation helped you just sort of get to that closure quicker than others.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a different kind of closure, I think.
Yes.
But yeah, like and it wasn't an easy road. It wasn't, but yeah. And that's because I worked at it. I sat down and worked at it, which is what my advice, like, that's what you have to do to all the guys and girls that are getting out of the military. Like, if you're having problems, like, or having issues, if your car breaks down on the side of the road, do you just sit in that car and be like, well, or do you get out and fix it? Like, that's you. Like, fix yourself so you can keep moving on. You know, you don't have to remain depressed or whatever that is going on because after you get out. But that's on the individual.
So the book is doing extremely well.
Yeah.
Man in the Arena. For a lot of people, so I think a lot of listeners, they've probably never heard that phrase, man in the arena. Can you explain where that came from? Because
it's a Theodore Roosevelt quote that, I mean, I read that quote before I went to Buds. You know, that quote's been a part of my whole career. I mean, my dad, when I graduated Buds, he made me a knife holder with that quote on it to put the K-bar on. And then what solidified sort of naming the book that is, you know, my retirement, one of my best friends got up there and sort of gave a speech about, you know, everything that we'd been through, and especially with the stuff at the end. He's like, "You are the man in the arena," which was probably one of the highest compliments, you know, from another team guy. But I wrote the book. I called the book that because I want my vision was not, this book isn't just about me. Obviously, it's what I went through.
Yeah.
But this book is about all of us who've been, you know, doing this job, whether it's special operations, Marines, Army, who've been deploying, fighting for this country the past 20 years, you know, and what we go through and what our families go through. I tried to like put that in there in the most realistic way as possible, and like everybody that goes and does this job, they are the man in the arena as well. And it's my favorite part of that quote is, it's not the critic who counts. Like, you can sit there and armchair quarterback me all day long, or armchair quarterback what the military does, but until you go ahead and strap up and go out there and do the job, your criticism to me doesn't count. You know, especially if you're smearing me, like, or it's your criticism is coming from an agenda. You know, it's like, great, you can think what you want.
You know, it just hit me, and I want to do this, man, if you're up for it. You know, we're going to close out here. But if you'll read that for us, I want to throw that onto the back of this podcast. We've got the quote. Hey, Eddie, you get to close this out because this is about you. To our listeners, man, what's the best piece of advice you can give them based off the plight you've gone through and now have come out successfully on the other side?
I mean, I don't want to like give generic, like, don't quit or whatever, but it's, you know, adversity comes in all different shapes or forms, you know. Everybody has their own struggles, but like it's getting through that adversity, getting through that mountain that's in front of you, and taking it, you know, day by day. You know, once you get through there, you'll not realize how strong you are on the other side. It makes you stronger each time you face a mountain of adversity like that and you get through. But it's not quitting while you're getting through there. It's having a mindset of, you know, and submitting, like I would say, submitting like to God or whatever you believe in. You know, you can't control everything, but, you know, as long as you have a, you know, don't quit mindset, and I don't know where I'm going with this.
No. Character is built through adversity.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, what's that saying? You know, whatever sharpens steel.
Iron sharpens iron.
Yeah, iron sharpens iron.
So does one man sharpens another.
Exactly, yeah. And that's the biggest thing I can say. And then just, you know, be grateful especially for people who are listening that live in this country. Be grateful you live in this country. Yeah. That's all I can say. I was like, this country is the greatest country in the world. No matter what's going on with politics and all that, you know, this country is the greatest country, and I think everyone should be grateful to live in it. Amen to that. Yeah. This country isn't perfect. We've never tried to portray it as perfect. The SEAL community isn't perfect, but guess what? They're pretty damn good. Yeah. And we're fortunate. Hey, Eddie, people can find the book anywhere books are sold. Yep. Amazon. You can go to EddieGallagherBook.com, or, you know, anywhere, all the stores that they're in. And then we'll post all your socials so that people can follow you or know where to find you. Eddie, I can't thank you enough, man.
I've learned from this, and I've heard your whole story. And I mean, not only does it impact me, but it's changed me. And each person that I meet and have an open mind and listen to, I take something away. So, bro, I'm not saying that to inflate you. It's genuine, and I appreciate taking the time to come out here to Austin when I know you're being hailed everywhere to spend a little time with me, man.
No, brother, I appreciate it, man. Like I said, dude, I know we didn't work together, but I always respected you and the teams, and it's really an honor to come out here and be able to talk to you. And thank you for just giving me the platform to go through everything, and hopefully the people listening can learn from it as well.
Right on. Guys, this is Truth and Tribe, hosted by Mike Sorelli. Again, thank you to our guest, Eddie Gallagher. We'll see you next time.